Hi everyone, I hope you are doing well. So we're back. We're going to do another video. Um, we are going to talk about the collapse of the Winnebago County Courthouse. And before I get into this story, I actually know that last year, November, the Winnebago County Courthouse was on fire, and I just kind of think that it's relevant. So, talk a little bit about that as well. So, the man charged with arson in connection with the Winnebago County Courthouse fire, a 25-year-old man, is charged with setting fire to the old Winnebago County Courthouse Saturday night. Larry Lee Wilkins is listed as homeless according to Winnebago County court records and is charged with aggravated arson, and criminal damage to state-supported property. According to the Rockford Fire Department, the fire began around 10:30 p.m. November 5th in a west exterior stairwell of the courthouse at 403 Elm Street. The fire extended into the basement of the courthouse, causing an estimated $200,000 worth of damage. While battling the fire, a firefighter received a head injury, requiring him to be taken to a nearby hospital for treatment. And I believe he went to Swedes, because Swedes is like a hop, skip, and jump away from the courthouse. The Winnebago County State's Attorney's Office says surveillance video from the night of the fire shows a person walking out of the burning stairwell. On November 7th, a Winnebago County employee who had seen the security footage told investigators about a person sleeping in the west stairwell who appeared to match the person caught on camera at the time of the fire. After speaking with Wilkins, investigators determined he was a suspect from the security video. Wilkins is expected to make his first court appearance at 1:30 p.m. On Tuesday afternoon. In-person court appearances at the Winnebago County Courthouse are not expected to resume the week of November 7th through the 11th. Anyways, it just goes on and on. It was expected damage at $200,000. So they talked about this fire, right? That recently happened. It happened November of last year. And now I'm going to dive into another story about the Winnebago County Courthouse. So let's get into it. Winnebago County decided it needed a brand new courthouse to meet the needs of the growing area in 1875. The population of Rockford at this time was around 12,000 people, and the town had 12 churches, 5 banks, and several newspapers. The courthouse project was advertised, and many plans were submitted until, finally, Henry L. Gay's design was accepted. W.D. Richardson was a contractor hired to build the newest Winnebago County Courthouse, and F.E. Latham was the supervisor of the project. W.D. Richardson was a contractor from Springfield who had experience building the French Venetian style of building that was selected. Work began in the spring of 1876, and the cornerstone was set on June 22, 1876. With great fanfare and led by the state's Masonic lodges. The domed roof was to be the jewel in the crown of the building and originally was scheduled to be set in 1876. The weather didn't cooperate and the whole project was behind schedule for several months. It was not ready for the dome to be added until the spring of 1877. On Friday, May 11, 1877, at around 11:30 a.m., W.D. Richardson and F.E. Latham were inspecting the domed roof and walls. They were discussing their concerns about the strength of the walls supporting the dome. Richardson heard the horrific sound of something cracking, and both men ran to the northwest corner of the building. They just had time to reach the west wall when the front of the building fell. Just as the cornerstone was being placed in the dome of the main pavilion, the brickwork between the iron and the stone gave way, and the entire dome and interior walls of the structure came crumbling down with a terrible crash, which was heard nearly a mile away. So, oh my God, and think about it, this is like 1876, so you don't know what the fuck is going on, especially if you can hear that a mile away. Oh my God. Imagine the people that were on the site though, like, holy shit. The crash was tremendous, and a wall of dust sprang up where the wall once stood. Spectators hesitated just for a moment before they rushed forward to see what could be done for the 20 or so men working inside the structure. Timothy Flanagan was one of the men working that day. His task on that Friday morning was to set the keystone and the pediment of the dome. Flanagan was working up at the top when the wall started to crumble. The crowd below looked on in horror as Flanagan leapt across in an attempt to grasp the main guy rope. Flanagan missed the rope and fell 100 feet to the ground below, his body hitting the ground with a sickening thud. Oh my God, dude, that's horrific. That is horrific. Several men ran forward, picked up Flanagan's body, and put it on the lawn of the courthouse. The masonry fell from all sides, and men's screams could be heard above the roar of the falling stone. Men were seen hanging from ropes on different parts of the building, while others were jumping from windows. Men from the crowd rushed forward to assist with the rescue efforts, as others ran for doctors. The rescuers uncovered several men quickly. One of the first men uncovered was Andrew Bildall, who had a terrible gash on his head that was filled with ash and mortar. He was loaded into a cart and taken to his home to have the wound dressed. William McInnes of Rockford was almost completely buried, but the men quickly got him out and loaded into a cart to be delivered to his home. He suffered a broken leg and numerous injuries. George Gloss was so badly mangled that the sight of his body visibly shook the crowd. He was smashed and was missing a leg. He was carried over to the old courthouse, which was set up as a temporary morgue. 2 more men were saved from the fire escape, led to safety by Chief Engineer John Lakin. The word had started to spread throughout the city, and others came to assist. Family members rushed to the building to hear the condition of their menfolk. Many of the men working on the building were from the area, and friends would peer into the faces of the men as they were brought out of the debris. They were either loaded onto a wagon to be transported to their homes or laid in the old courthouse to wait to be identified. That is horrible, guys. That is horrible. Some of the men were from Springfield and had no family members living nearby, but they had acquaintances who ran to help. The injured men from Springfield were taken to the city hotel to have their wounds tended. There was a wretched moment when a poor German woman came forward screaming her husband's name, Albert Hang. When his body was finally brought out, it presented a ghastly spectacle for all to see. His poor body had been pulverized and torn by the large stones that fell on him. The men rushed him through the crowd to the courthouse as quickly as possible. Scene after heart-wrenching scene played out as the rescuers continued to dig for the men. A little girl wandered through the crowd crying for her papa. No one had the heart to tell her that he was still missing. His body would not be found for another day. The inquest was started as soon as the bodies were laid out in the courthouse and covered with cloths. The purpose of this inquest was not to determine the cause for the accident, but to identify the dead men. Other men were still missing, and the rescue efforts continued for days. Around 12 a.m. on Saturday, one of the workers came across a clump of human hair. It was shortly found to be A.E. Hollenbeck's scalp. His body was pinned under a massive stone weighing several tons. Drills were brought in, and parts of the rock were drilled off until the only part still trapped was his arm. The decision was made to cut the arm off to free the rest of the body. The top of Hollenbeck's head was completely gone. As they removed the rest of Hollenbeck's body, they uncovered another man, Big Fred Hung, from Springfield, and his body was so ghastly that no description of the remains was given. These last 2 bodies took over 4 hours to uncover. In all, it took over 40 long hours for all the bodies to be discovered. Trains arrived from all over northern Illinois as people flocked to Rockford to see the remains of the building. The police roped off the dangerous area and stood guard to keep the crowds at a safe distance. When the totals came in, several men were killed immediately and 2 others died later. Another 12 were wounded in the tragedy. Funerals were held and more was learned of the men who died. Hollenbeck was 45 years old and had been born in New York, like many of Rockford's early settlers. He was a Mason and was buried with full Masonic honors. Over 1,000 people attended his funeral. Fred Hung left a wife and 4 children in Springfield and was a brother of Chris Hung, who formerly owned a marble yard here. Albert Hung was a son of the above-mentioned Chris Hung and left a wife and children in Rockford. John Pipe moved to Rockford in 1875, and his father was the foreman of the courthouse project. George Gloss, who lived in Rockford, was an African American who left a wife and 3 children. John Warren, another African American, worked as a rigger and lived in Rockford with his wife and 3 children. Frank Harris, the blacksmith, was on the roof when the courthouse fell. He advised a co-worker to run, but then he turned the other way. The co-worker lived and Harris fell with the building. He was pulled from the ruins with a badly crushed leg. Fred was taken to the city hotel for treatment, which included amputation of his leg. Unfortunately, gangrene set in. Harris was the 9th man to die. He was only 24 years old and lived in Dixon. His family members came to retrieve his body and took him home for burial. Inquest attempted to answer the questions left by the horrible accident. The articles in the paper seemed to point the finger at the architect, Mr. Gay. The same articles praised the builder, Richardson, stating that at personal cost, the builder added improvements to increase the safety of the building. Richardson had also impressed everyone with the care he gave the wounded men and their families. The coroner's jury investigated the accident for over 12 days, interviewing workmen, the architect, and other architects who studied the design. In the end, they found the architect guilty for the flawed design, and the contractor and the county board were found guilty of negligence for not noticing the flaws. A new architect and designers were hired to assess the damage caused by the falling dome and to complete the project. The courthouse was finally completed with the dome, and the building was dedicated in October 1878. The final cost was $211,000. An expert from the May 18, 1877 Rockford Weekly Gazette stated, "Never before has any public affliction found its way so near to the doors of our own homes, or been made so sacredly our own." And that is the end of that story, guys. So, I just find it weird that there was an accident with it back, way back when. And then it was just, like 6 months ago, 7 months ago, something like that. It was set on fire by a homeless man, is what they're saying. I don't know, guys. This is just one of them things I'm talking about. Like, I'm just like, there's another coincidence of something that happened. And then it's like history repeats itself all the time. Which we've seen. History does have a way of repeating itself. We've seen that. Anyways, on that note, guys, I'm gonna go shoot footage for this video. On that note, if you guys liked this video, give me a thumbs up. If you guys want to see more videos like this, please subscribe. And as always, I appreciate you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.